stops all too soon.
Hey, I got the music playing in my head.
Yeah, but I can't hear it. Just because you got an echo chamber up there doesn't mean I can.
Yeah, and it is a rather bulbous head, is it not? How do I need to zoom my camera in so nobody can see who's walking around behind us, and everybody can see that huge nose I have on my face.
Yeah.
There we go. Is that a
Well,
little
you
better?
can't see me because I have a face for radio, like Mike McCarville says.
Yeah,
So-
no kidding. Those are my words. I have a face for radio and a voice for print. So
Yeah.
Man who's never had a bad day.
What was that, Jesse?
I said the man who's never had a bad day.
Yeah. Microphone. I can't. It's like
microphone
echo.
up.
Microphone up.
Okay. All right.
Testing.
So
Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
yeah. Okay. Great. Now I got that oompa loompa doompa dee.
Yeah, so Jesse and I are sitting next to each other. He's facing one way, I'm facing the other. So that's why we have different backdrops. And Frank is remote. He's in his remote location high above the, what is that, like the 32nd floor of the Zakor Towers out in northern McLeod territory.
No. We're going to do the Mark Levin version if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
He's here now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building. We've once again made contact with our leader, that is, Frank Zakor.
That's it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. How are you?
Yes, Mark Levin, the great one, or whatever they call it. I keep on trying to listen to him sometimes because he doesn't put much out on print. I keep hearing great things, but anyways, I'm working during the time of all those conservative radio broadcasters.
Levin is on at night, 7 p.m. KTOK 1000.
Okay, now I don't have an excuse. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So this tour portion is Noach. And it's one of those times where, because of Simchat Torah, the end of Sukkot, and everybody's traveling, and throughout the whole Messianic world, it seems like we always miss the beginning of Bereshit, and there's so much happening there. There is, it sets the pace, it sets the groundworks for how you are to read everything else that follows.
You mean that there's a reason for the beginning?
Yeah, there's a reason for how everything is stated in the beginning, a reason for the terminology, and there's some fun things. I've mentioned this in the past. There's something called a chiastic structure. And there goes one of my sons in the background. But there's something called a chiastic
Was that Beavis or Butthead?
chiasm. And yes. And so, and if you're watching Jesse, he's trying to do arm signals, telling everybody where to go. We've not done video before, so we're not used to this.
Well,
This
they
is
can't
the
see
first
me
time.
live. They can't see me live unless I'm talking, because this thing lovely has a switcheroo technique.
Yeah, okay. So the Torah sets up for us how we're supposed to study it, how we're supposed to read it. This is not a history book, but it has history. This is not a law book, but there's a lot of law in it. This is not a philosophy book, but the majority of it is philosophy. And it's not a storybook, though we're told all of these things in stories. And so the beginning starts out in a very strange way. And as we go through the creation series in Bereshit chapter 1 or Genesis chapter 1, we see some oddities. And this is where immediately we, coming from this side and so many hundreds and thousands of years removed from the writers and the oral teachers, we need to understand and look at, we need to read carefully. It's kind of like lullabies. What are some lullabies, boys? I've got three of my sons here in the
There's
room.
Grimm's fairy tales, and there's
Okay, yeah, but like, what's the ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Ring around the rosary, pockets full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. We're lulled to sleep by the rhythm and the tone But when
But the
we
message is
stop
horrible.
and we read the actual words, it's horror. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, rockabye baby in the treetop, the wind is going to blow and the cradle will rock. But if the bough breaks,
And the cradle
what baby's
fall.
going to go to sleep after the next verse? I mean, seriously, you just scared the life out of that kid. But we read these stories sometimes almost as though we're listening to the lullaby and we're just going along with the words, but we don't stop and slow down and ask the certain questions. Wait a minute, we've got day and night on day 1, but it's not until day 4 that the sun and the moon and the stars are created. So what was day and what was night during that period? And what does that have to do with Noah? I'm glad you asked, because there is a huge parallel with thought by thought and instant by instant, from the creation series on one side and Noah with the flood and coming out of the ark and the events that immediately followed the ark with the creation of Adam, the Chava, the tree of knowledge and from the garden, and then with Cain and his dreadful sin, which even expels him further. There's huge parallels, and it's not by happenstance. With Noah, in this Torah portion, we have a recreation of the earth. God commanded Noah to get into the ark, and it's God, by God's hand, who closes the door. Noah, by his hand, he opens the door, and he comes into a brand new world. And if we focus on certain things, like what was the sin of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the Torah is not explicit on that. It doesn't go into detail of exactly what this sin is. And I think it does so for a purpose, because the sin itself is not what you need to be focusing on. The intent and the condition of the heart and what led us into that sin and the result of the sin is what we need to be focusing on, not the specific sin. It's almost like the ashes of the red heifer. Well, this sounds mystical. Why do we do this? We get explanations and we can understand a lot of other things about so many other commandments. But this one you can't understand. It's witchcraft. It's voodoo magic with this ashes of the red heifer. And so it's similar in that aspect.
Yeah, it's obvious.
Yeah, so it's one of those things of this one you don't need to focus on. Focus on the intent and the purpose and the result. Same thing with the sin of the tree. And so we're going to go into this, and hopefully we can show the parallels. I also want to show so many other parallels. And what has always fascinated me and troubled me was the sin of Shem. What was this sin of Shem? Because it really doesn't tell us what it was. And we have the result of Ham's son, his fourth son. There's a hint. His fourth son is cursed. And it's the same curse that the serpent got from God. Go ahead, Jess.
I will say that with your statement on the whole subject of intent, it does bring to mind how often in the past I've had to explain to people who look at sacrifices. If I'm discussing with Christians, they'll look at the sacrifices. Why do you do them? Why do you do this? And I immediately go, don't pay attention to the process that you have to do, because it is important that you have to do it in a certain fashion, because God said do it in this fashion. But the main focus behind it is not what you're doing, it's the intent behind it.
The why.
The why, exactly.
Right. And it's one of those things where what you're doing and the intent behind it need to commingle to an extent. So what do we agree on? We're going to read the first Aliyah, which is the first part of Parashah Noah.
Right.
And give us those verses, if you will, Jesse, and then Frank, if you'll do the blessing, we'll start off and get into it.
I wanted to go ahead.
No, I was just going to caution everybody. I've already warned Jesse that his number one responsibility here is to keep me on track, because there is so much that goes into so many areas that it sets up the pattern. You remember that little verse in Proverbs, or in Psalms, where he leads me through the cycles of righteousness? Most Christian Bible says he leads me through the paths. It's because Christianity and the Greek thought process is linear. Hebrew and Torah thought process is cyclical. We go through cycles. Keep that in mind as we start out with the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the recreation after the flood.
Okay,
Cycles.
I wanted to add something. Well, not so much add as for clarification. So we have been told that you can get everything from Bereshit and realize the rest of the Torah. Okay, so is the first couple chapters, first 6, 10 chapters, more of a syllabus for a course in understanding? Because the syllabus tells you what you're going to do, what you're going to read, and why, correct?
You could call it a syllabus. It's setting up how we read it and how we study it.
Right.
So yes, it's one of those data burst type things. It's what I call the Torah taco or the cosmic burrito. Everything's going to be repetitive. Everything is going to be repetitive of the very first chapter of Bereshit. You read the first chapter, there is so much there if we're asking the right questions. And then we go into the second chapter. Why does the second chapter seem to repeat things from the first chapter? Because it does.
Mm.
It does, because now we took that bite or that bit from the first chapter, and I'm going to expound on it a little bit and give you just a little bit more, which should beg so many more questions, such as our first son is born. And out of all the things that Chava or Eve is going to say, recorded for all of history, this is the mother of all mankind.
Mm-hmm.
This is the quintessential woman. She was the one that was created with Adam and was one with Adam, separated with Adam, and came back to Adam and became one with him again.
Right.
And all we have with the birth of Cain is, oh, look, it's a boy? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Moses, it's that important that you record that? Oh, look, it's a boy. Yay. Mazel tov. I mean, come on now. There's got to be something there.
Well, that leaves a lot of other stuff open.
Yeah, so we don't want to read this as a story. We don't want to read it as a law book. We don't want to read it as a history book. We want to read it as a guide for our life. And once I understand this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm turning to topics.
Where's my towel?
And I'm turning to topics, then I'm going to delve into that topic, and that topic will take me from Genesis to Exodus to Leviticus to Numbers to Deuteronomy, and that topic will come up again in Elijah and Isaiah and etc. So the topic is repetitive and cyclical. So Frank, if you're ready to give us the blessing, and Jesse, you're ready to read, let's go ahead and delve into it.
Okay, Jesse, are you ready?
And willing.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amim v'tan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. Melech Ne'eman.
Amen. Genesis chapter 6, verse 9 through 22, read from Chabad's translation of Noah. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth became full of robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it had become corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth has become full of robbery because of them. And behold, I am destroying them from the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with compartments. You shall caulk it both inside and outside with pitch. And this is the size you shall make it: 300 cubits the length of the ark, 50 cubits its breadth, and 30 cubits its height. You shall make a skylight for the ark, and to a cubit you shall finish it to the top. And the entrance of the ark you shall place in its side. You shall make it with bottom compartments, second story compartments, and third story compartments. And I, behold, I bring the flood water upon the earth to destroy all flesh in which there is the spirit of life. From, from beneath the heavens, all that is upon the earth will perish. And I will set up my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you, and all living things of all flesh, two of each you shall bring into the ark to preserve alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the fowl after its kind, and of the animals after their kind, of every creeping thing upon the ground after its kind. Two of each shall come to you to preserve life, to preserve alive. And you take for yourself of every food that is eaten, and gather it into you, and it shall be for you and for them to eat. And Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'kayeh olam nota b'tukenu. Baruch atah Adonai, notein haTorah. El Melech Naaman. So, and
Yeah. So this just sets up the story because there's so much here, and I trust that everyone has read the Torah portion or is going to continue to read it as we go through what we're trying to present here tonight. Because the next is Noah goes into the ark, and then we have the lullaby of rain and more rain, and then no rain, and Noah floats around, and it's basically 360 days that give or take. It's 360 days. Noah is inside this ark, and then certain events happen. The waters begin to subside, and the sky comes out, and Noah sends out birds, and then one bird comes back with vegetation, and then it doesn't come back at all. And then a few days later, Noah opens up the door, and everybody comes out of the ark, and there's a big happy time, and God gives us this covenant of the rainbow. By the way, I want to let everybody know here, I want you to research this on your own. There is a direct correlation between the rainbow and the Sabbath. Read God's account of the establishing of the Sabbath, and then come back and read the account of the covenant of the rainbow. And it might not be immediate to you because we're still caught up in that Greek thinking and the Christian thinking of things, and I wish everybody knew Hebrew, or at least a smidgen of Hebrew, so they could look up the words in Hebrew, because the structure, and I mentioned this before, a chiastic structure. Chiastic structure is, it's a Greek word. It comes from chi, which is an X or a cross, however you want to call it, but it's a intersection of two lines is what the chi is. And it's symbolic about where they intersect, not about whether it's a cross or an X or anything like that. It's about where they intersect. And the chiastic structure is used a lot in music, a lot in poetry. When I went to the Christian universities and such, I was taught that Hebrew, especially these first several chapters of Genesis, was meant to be sung as a way to remember, because everything was orally given, and so it was in a song, and that was a way to remember how to recite it verbatim. And so it was a poetry and a song, and the way that poetry was developed was the themes rhymed, not necessarily the words, but it's more so than that. It's more so than that. The chiastic structure is you have A, B, C, D, then you come back to C, or a C prime, B prime, and A prime. And so you'll either build a ladder going up and down, or you can do it horizontally of A, B, C, D. The main point, A, B, C, gets you to that main point. And then almost in reverse notion, we go backwards to C, B, A. And we'll see this over and over and over again. And it's whenever you see this chiastic structure, you see it with the covenant of Shabbat, of Sabbath. That same chiastic structure is there with the rainbow. And the intersecting point is odd, very, very odd. The purpose of Sabbath is to control and put fences around creation. In other words, God is creating and he's creating. It's a continual creation going on and on and on, but he ceases his creation and he rests. The rainbow is almost the antithesis of this. Things are being destroyed and destroyed and destroyed, and God sees the rainbow and he ceases the destruction. And within the chiastic structure of how Sabbath is presented and how the rainbow is presented, they meet and they have that same correlation. And I'm posing to you today, and it's not me, it's not my idea. This comes from Rabbi Hirsch, all the old dead guys, Raphael Hirsch, Aryeh Kaplan, my two favorite rabbis forever, as well as some modern rabbis in Israel that are teaching in different yeshivas today, where I get a lot of my lessons from, or a lot of my helps and thought processes and questions from. Maimonides speaks on this. The Talmud speaks on these things.
So you're a groupie.
Yeah. I'm a groupie. I wish I could say I was a roadie setting up for these guys just to be
really.
Presence would be awesome. But no, this isn't my thinking. This isn't me. It's just a way that I'm trying to present it, which I do a horrible disservice to. Yeah.
If I may, before you launch into your main points, it makes all the more understanding now why people get things wrong, because it's like they're listening to an AM radio trying to pick up the words to the song, and they insert some blah 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 blah, yeah, and they get the main chorus, but they miss the other words in between, and they supplant them with something else. So that, to me, that makes a lot of sense now why people get things wrong, is because they're not listening to the song, they're not picking up the words. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct on that. And so the Torah is written in this style, and it's done so purposely. And when we understand what chiasm is and the purpose for it, we can start spotting and seeing these things. Now, we've introduced this before over the past several years of here's the chiastic structure of this chapter or this thought, this topic in other areas. So what I propose to you now is there is not just the same chiastic structure, there's an exact parallel, a huge correlation between the creation of the world from Genesis chapter 1 and the flood and everything that follows. We have the first day of the creation of the world. What happens? It's chaos. It's tohu vevohu. It's the world is it. Well, does anybody have that open? Maybe we could read it real quick. But
Tohu vibohu, right?
Yeah, just go to Genesis chapter 1, and let me see if I can open it up real quick. I'll just read that quickly. We have, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and there's a pause there, and it's a pregnant pause. And the rabbis go into huge detail on that. Because the very next verse, if God created it, why was it not created perfect? Why is it, verse 2, the earth became formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light was good, separated light from darkness. God called the light day, and there was day and night. And we see something similar is we have a light within the ark, right?
Yeah, the Zohar.
And that light, and that's what it's called, a Zohar. Interesting teachings on it, but I want to get quickly to the point. We have a light inside the ark in the midst of all this chaos. What happened to cause this chaos? Well, let's read a little bit more in Genesis chapter 1. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters and let it separate the waters from the waters. And the expanse separated what? It separated waters above and waters beneath. How did the flood come about? Well, the waters above fell.
And the waters
Well,
beneath
until
broke up.
we have this chaos and there's darkness, and the only light is within the ark. And so we see that correlation here, that the flood is very reminiscent with our creation series. So here we have day 2. The waters are being separated. Those above are being separated from those beneath. Those beneath are receding into the earth. Those above are going above. And the expanse in the middle is what we call the sky. Plain and simple. We have the sky, waters above, waters beneath. What happens after the flood? God stopped the water from the rain from falling, returned those waters to where they belong, above, and the waters in the earth stopped. The wells within the earth stopped spewing forth, and the waters began to subside, and we have an expanse in the middle. Correlation, parallel. Next day. God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered in one place, and the dry land appeared. What happens with Noah? The ark rests upon a mountain. The dry land appears. Interesting. God said it was good. And then he said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit, and the earth bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them, and so. And it was good. And so on this day, the third day, we have vegetation. What's happening on the ark on the third day? Not necessarily, let's not call it a day. Let's just call it the third event. Noah opens the window so he can see the expanse. He sees he's resting on a mountain, and he lets loose birds. He lets loose the raven. Raven comes back. Raven stays away. Then he lets loose a dove. Dove comes back, and then the dove comes back with something in its beak, an olive branch, vegetation. Now we have the waters above separated from the waters beneath. We have the earth coming about, and we have separation. What else happens on this day? Don't you remember? On the second day, birds and fish were created. On the second day, Noah sends out the raven. We do have a correlation here, and it keeps on going. And God said on the fourth day, he said, let there be lights in the expanse. Well, wait a minute. We've already discussed this light, didn't we, Chris? Yeah, and you know what? I just want to skip over the fourth day because there's not a direct correlation with the flood series here, but I'll come back to it because there's a purpose for it. There's a purpose why it's not here, and that purpose comes up within our Torah portion. But on the fifth day, what happens on the fifth day? Anybody? Anybody? I'm sorry. It's actually, I think I got out of order here, but the fifth day was the birds and the fish. So I did get out of order, and I think you're following with what I'm saying here. But then on the sixth day, what happens on the sixth day? God said, let the earth bring forth. This is crucial. God spoke to the earth and said, you will bring forth living creatures. There's a difference between what God spoke to the earth to do and what God enjoined with the earth to do. On the sixth day, God spoke to the earth to bring forth living creatures. What happens with Noah? Noah opens the ark. We have a question, and hold on to that question, Jesse. Hopefully we can come back to it. But on the sixth day, the correlation is Noah opens the door to the ark. God says, go out, be fruitful and multiply. Everybody out of the ark, everybody off the boat. And so Noah and his family and all the animals come off the boat, and the animals go forth, and they're fruitful and multiply. And the commandment is still there for Noah to be fruitful and multiply. Noah already has 3 sons, but we'll see what comes with that, because that's going to come up in chapter 6 of our Torah portion. Hopefully we can get there. So we see this correlation that on the sixth day, man and beast are created. What does it say about the beast again? God said, earth, bring forth. But same thing on the sixth day. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and over the cattle and over the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. And so the question's always asked, who is this us? Now I pose to you, this is not an absolute, so it has to be this and nothing else. No, Torah doesn't teach that way. Hebrew and Judaism doesn't think that way. Just because it says, let us make man, that us, for the purpose of teaching a topic and a lesson, that us could be several things. That us could be the Messiah, that us could be the angels. But I'm posing to you today, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. God is speaking to the earth. Not that the earth is a sentient being capable of making decisions on its own, but isn't it interesting? God didn't speak man into existence, and God didn't create man out of nothingness. God reached into the earth, molded man from the earth, and then breathed his spirit into it. It's almost as if God is saying, earth, you provide the body, I'll provide the soul. Let's do this together. Because from this point on, there is a significant factor throughout all of Torah and all the stories in Torah, and including Tanakh with the prophets, and on into, if you read the New Testament, even Revelation speaks of it, a new Jerusalem. What's so important about the earth? What's so important about Eretz Israel? Because God joined in with the earth and created man. What's the result of our first sin? Earth no longer freely gives of itself. It's no longer the mother to you that it was meant to be. Now you have to work it so that you can eat. There's a tie there. And we see this as we continue on. Noah comes out of the ark. The commandment is to be fruitful and multiply. The first thing he does, anybody recall? After the covenant of the rainbow and such, the first thing he does, he plants a vineyard. First of all, I should say he does a sacrifice of the clean animals. Gee, isn't that odd for my Christian friends out there that he knew what clean animals were? But we'll go on with that. The first thing he does is he plants a vineyard.
Torah before Torah was printed?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
He plants a vineyard.
Hold on. Are you sure the first thing is planting a vineyard? Give me a second to look this over real fast.
Well,
Because that does seem a little strange. Oh, I'm going to plant a vineyard. Unless we are referring to something that most people do reference very thoroughly, which is very disturbing if we view it in that light. Being fruitful and multiplying, also implying the concept of planting a vineyard.
Well, now that's very possible. But there's an interesting word that goes on here. Chapter 8. Let's go down to the fourth aliyah. It's Genesis chapter 8, or Bereshit chapter 8. And God spoke to Moses, saying, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and your wives with you. Every living thing that is with you of all flesh, the fowl, the animals, everything that creeps, and that's correlation. It's kind of wrapping up our Genesis series of the creation. So Noah went out, every beast, and we continue along. And the Lord's Noah creates a sacrifice, and God says, "I'll no longer curse the earth." Do we remember why we had the flood to begin with? Anyone?
You mean because Adam and Eve were pushed out of the garden and cursed as the ground for you from now on?
What's it say in our Torah portion? Now the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth became full of robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it had become corrupted, for all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. In other words, I can see the result of this if it continues on in this route. If it continues along this straightforward path, I see the destruction. I know the destruction. Let's curb this now. And why? Because the earth has become full of robbery because of them, but it doesn't tell us who the them is. We assume it's man. It's a good assumption.
It's always the them. It's always us against them, right?
Considering flesh has become corrupted, I would assume this so-called robbery is all flesh, not just man.
Ah, yeah. So something's happened. All right. See if I can jump to the point real quick before we get too much further. Adam is molded. God breathes his spirit into him. God takes Adam from the place that he was molded or created, and he places him in a garden. God created the garden, and God put Adam in the garden. And what does our Torah tell us? He put him in the garden to work the garden. He was a husbandman. And this same thing comes up. I'm jumping all over the place here. So
real quick, while you're jumping around, it does bring to mind the way that this is layered and the way it's designed almost makes me think back to the question that was posed earlier in this show, which I will read it out loud because it fits rather well. Why did Noah not pull a Jonah? Why did, as it's worded, why did Noah ever try to warn the people about the flood, and if not, why? That was the question posed.
Well, the Torah itself, the text itself, is silent on that. It doesn't say he did, but it doesn't say he didn't. So why do you assume he didn't? I mean, if you're gonna ask that question, you're coming from an assumption that he did not, but the Torah does not, or the text itself does not say whether he did or he did not. So why are you assuming that he did not? My point with this is it goes back to why are we not told the specifics of the sin of Adam and Eve? Because the sin itself is not significant. Whether Noah warned or not is not significant. What is the purpose of the destruction? What is the purpose of Noah? What is the purpose of these things is the important thing that we need to get, because this is going to be repetitive in every individual's life, in every civilization's course, and throughout all of Israel. This event will be repetitive. So it's not so much that he warned anybody or didn't warn anybody. It's not relevant to the story, is the point. We can presume he did, or we can presume he did not.
All right. I mean, it took him 120 years to build the ark.
Right. To build the ark, I'm sure somebody asked.
Yeah.
No, what's that? Well, it's a boat. A boat? What's a boat? Well, it's for floating on water, and there's no body of water near us, so why do you what's a flood? Yeah, I mean, because at that time there was no rain.
Yeah,
a mist came up and a mist subsided, and that's how everything got watered. There was no such thing as a thunderstorm and a rain and things like that. So
exactly.
What, Noah just hid this? I'm not going to tell you. You all die. Ha ha. I got a secret, and I'm not going to tell you. No, it's not that way, because he was.
And to add more to what you're trying to state on the question, a good example for this, for those who have actually seen the movie, is the kind of craziness crap, if you don't mind the phrasing, that the Evan Almighty movie tried to display. He's trying to explain it as best he can while also hiding some of it, because they're just all going to mock him. It's kind of hard to not mock him for something as stupid as it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't mock Jonah as he's walking through the streets, whether he was looked normal with beautiful robes, or he looked like he just came out of a resurrection in a fish's belly. So trying to
him.
Yeah, he probably smelled and looked pretty disgusting. nonetheless, so going down to our sixth portion, or six aliyahs, it's Genesis chapter 9, verses 18. It says, "And the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Chem, and Japhet, or Japheth." But it says something really weird here. And Chem was the father of Canaan. Ham was the father of Canaan. Why even introduce that? Did Canaan come out of the ark too, or what? This is a side note, but let's go on to the next verse. "So these three were the sons of Noah, and from these the entire earth spread out." Wait a minute. What about Canaan? I mean, you mentioned him. Why are you saying these are the three sons, and from these three only did the earth spread out? You specifically mentioned Canaan. But let's move on. I'm hoping I can cover some of this stuff as I get back to it. "And Noah began to be a master of the soil and planted a vineyard." Now this, I'm looking at Chabad. If you're looking at King James Version, again, this is Genesis chapter 9, verse 20. Jesse, can you read the Hebrew there? If you can't, I'm gonna look it up so I can read it, because I don't have it next to me. All I have is the text here in English. It's Vechel. Where is it? Can you read what that says? Jesse, is your mic muted?
I'm just reading it right now, real quick, just to make sure I'm getting it right.
Okay.
Vayahel Noah.
Okay.
Sorry, they do a very fine detail.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Vechal Noach. Vechal Noach. Then began Noach. But then it goes into Vehi, and he. So then began Noah, and we have this strange word of, can you read what that word is, Jesse? Hadama. Then
Adama
began
or Adam?
then we began Noah, Haish, or Ish, Hadama. Then began Noah, the man of the earth, and he planted a vineyard. This makes no sense. Even reading it in Hebrew, it's very difficult. So everybody struggles with trying to translate this one. And began Noah, the master of the soil, or better yet, because we see this Ish Hadama, the gardener. Then began Noah the gardener. Then began Noah the husbandman. Ish Hadama sometimes is translated as husbandman, or caretaker, or gardener. Then began, what did he begin doing? Because we have the connective, Vav, later on, and he planted a vineyard. It's not he began planting a vineyard. It is he began, maybe it's he began being the husbandman. He began being the gardener. Oh, and while he was doing this, he planted a vineyard. Now, what the sages come back and say is, if we go back up to the beginning of chapter 9, at the end of chapter 8, or beginning of chapter 8, and then going into chapter 9, but let's start off at the beginning of chapter 9, verse 1. "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." And so Maimonides and the other sages, they come back and they say what Noah began doing was he began procreating. He tried to have a son. That's what his beginning was. And while he was doing this, he was also planting a vineyard in the same time frame. He's planting a vineyard. And then we go into the whole horrible thing of he gets drunk, or it just says he drank from the vineyard. Let me get back to that area. "And Noah began he began, and he was the gardener, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank the wine and became drunk. And he uncovered himself. He became naked," because it's naked, not just an uncovering. "He uncovered himself within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his two brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took the garment." It has the imperative, the garment, not a garment, not any cloak, not a blanket. the garment, the cloak. It's an imperative. Which one? You haven't introduced this one to me yet in this story. What do you mean the garment? These are the questions we need to ask the texts. Whole teaching on it. So let's move on. And they placed it on their shoulders. They walked backwards so they wouldn't see his nakedness. They didn't uncover his nakedness. And then verse 24, and Noah awoke from his wine. It didn't say he woke from his sleep. It didn't say he got drunk, fell down face down in the gutter, and was out snoring and sawing logs. No, it just says he awoke from his, he knew what his son or his youngest son, same word, however you want to translate it, small, youngest, little son had done to him. Now wait a minute, we're not told what Ham did to him. Ham, the father of Canaan. Why are we bringing up Canaan again? Oh yeah, because Canaan's going to be cursed. Why Canaan? We don't even know the guy's alive yet. We don't even know if he's been born yet. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and he went outside and told his brothers. Told his brothers what? Usually we find in Torah, and he told his brothers, saying, lo and behold, I saw dad, and he was naked, and he's drunk, and he's slobbering in his vomit, and it's disgusting. Let's go take and make fun of the guy. No, that's not what it says. It just says that he went out and told his brothers. Told them what? We don't know. Another one of those strange things. This is reminiscent of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We don't know exactly what they did. We know they ate the fruit of it. But what does that mean? What was it that they actually did, said, thought? What does it mean? They didn't just reach out to an apple tree and pluck the apple. No, because
it was an apple tree.
Yeah, it's an analogy for something. It's less a physical tree than a representation for something, though it very well could have been physical. Don't have a problem with that.
And to add more disturbingness to it, considering the fact that it said, and Noah awoke from his wine. I know I'm fast forwarding you just a little, but considering the fact that it says, and Noah awoke from his wine, there's always been that teaching that when you are trying to achieve a level of enlightenment that is beyond the physical capabilities of consciousness, some people do require the aid of something that will dull the current consciousness, whether it be drugs, alcohol, or strong meditation.
Yeah, so a meditative state, contemplative, sometimes it's just getting your mind off the topic, going outside and running some laps and then coming back in and addressing that problem again, or sometimes we sleep on it, and really that there's a whole Torah thing on that itself of, hey, let's just sleep on it tonight and then tomorrow we'll come up with a good answer for it. Whatever it is, the point of it is Noah woke from that state. And waking from that state, he suddenly realizes what his son had done to him. Where do we see something like this before? Come on. I've already been talking about the creation series. And Adam and Eve's eyes were opened. What does it mean to awake? Your eyes are open to a new way of looking at something, a different way, a different cognizance, a different consciousness, a different aspect or position of something. Noah woke from the condition of his wine, and he has a new realization. And he's incensed, obviously, because the next verse says, and he said, cursed be Canaan. He shall be the lowest of the low. He shall be a slave among all the slaves, and he's going to be a slave to his brother. And it's not until much later that we find out that, oh, wait a minute, Ham did have 4 sons, and Canaan was the youngest of the 4. So, Noah was aware of his nakedness, I would think. He's drinking wine. He gets drunk. He gets naked within his own tent. Ham does something. And the Talmud goes back and forth in a midrashic style. Midrash is like a commentary. We're going to discuss this, so this is the commentary on our discussion. So midrash is a commentary on the text. Sometimes we've got to be careful with Midrash and Talmud. Jesse knows a little bit about the piano. Number 3 son, he learned the piano. My wife plays the piano very well. So many others that know the piano know that you play the piano with 2 hands. The right hand plays the song. Does that sound about right? So the right hand is the text. The right hand is our Torah portion. Here's what the text is saying. The left hand plays some type of a melody, a beat, in unison too. But if I can listen to the right hand only, and I can pick out Pinocchio, I can pick out, I don't know, name a good song, Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever, you know, I could pick out that theme. This is, oh, that's the theme to Star Trek. I can hear that in the right hand as it's playing.
Yeah.
If you were to hear the left hand only, it'd be very difficult to pick that out. But once you bring the 2 together, it creates a synergistic effect. Both of them together give a more beautiful meaning, and that's kind of what the Midrash is. The Midrash is more your left hand. If you read the left hand only, if you read the Midrash only, and not understanding the text, you're going to get lost, and you're kind of this crazy Meshuggah stuff, and the Christians have been pounding on the Jews for centuries because Talmud is this, and Talmud says that, and Talmud allows this, and Talmud forbids that. You didn't read the text, the right hand. You got to have the right hand and the left hand playing together. So here we have Talmud is saying, what did Canaan do? Nothing. Then why is Canaan cursed? It's because what his father did. What did his father do? Go back to what was Noah beginning. Noah had begun something. Why was he beginning something? Because God told him to be fruitful and multiply. Where do we see being fruitful and multiply? It is when Adam and Eve come out of the garden. Go forth and be fruitful and multiply. And they are fruitful and multiply. And what happens? They have 2 sons. First one, not so good. But the first one's supposed to get the double portion. First one gets the double inheritance, the double portion. He didn't turn out so good. So it passes to the next son. Well, the next son was killed by the first son, so then it goes on to the youngest son. They have other sons, but we're only seeing so many. And then we have Abraham. How many sons does he have? He has 2. Ishmael, not so good. Isaac, son of blessing. Isaac gets the double portion, but he's the second in order, chronological order. First of his mother, yes, but second chronological order. Isaac, how many sons does he have? 2. Anybody remember their names? Esau and Jacob. Okay. And the first one is Esau, and Jacob comes out on his heels. They're twins. And the first one, not so good. Second one gets the double portion. Wait a minute. The firstborn is supposed to get the double portion. Why is it all the patriarchs? It's not the firstborn that gets the double portion. Let's go back. What was the order of Ham? We have Seth, Ham, and Japheth.
Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
I mean, Shem, it's not Seth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Thanks, Frank. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And we're putting Ham in the middle. Is there a reason for that? I don't know. I don't know if that means he was the second son or not. I really don't. All I know is Noah's words. Noah calls him his youngest or his smallest, the littlest. And that is implicative of stature, order, and psychological or spiritual level. It's all encompassing. This is his smallest son, and his smallest son did something to interrupt Noah from having a 4th son. Why is having a 4th son so important? Remember back in Eden? How many rivers came out of Eden?
4.
4. Why was that even brought up? We never asked that question back then when we were reading that story. We were lulled to sleep by the lullaby. What's so important about 4 rivers coming out and watering the entire earth in correlation with Adam and Eve being told, go forth and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it? What did Noah understand of that teaching? To where now he sees, I need to have 4 sons. And why would Ham say, hey, you know what, dad's got 2 sons and this don't work. I mean, dad's got 3 sons. It don't work out if dad has 2 sons because one of us is going to die. So it's a good thing we have 3. And now dad's in there trying to have a 4th son. That means we got 2 pairs of 2. That means 1 or 2 of us are going to die. I'm stopping this thing now. I'm going to have 4 sons. And my youngest will have a portion, and I will have a portion, and from us, we will be the headwaters. We will be the 4 rivers that conquer the earth. We will have the double portion within my name. This is going to come up again. We're going to make bricks of brick. We're going to build ours, create a name for ourselves. This is what's going on throughout this whole Torah portion. We're repeating the story over from Adam and Eve through the pre-Adamic, or through the pre-Noahide flood. Now, after the flood, it's already repeating, and we're not a couple years from the water subsiding. And Noah says something here. This word is only used twice, maybe 3 times in all of Tanakh. Or I might be mispronouncing it. Aurora. It's curse.
Where have we encountered something like this before? Once before.
Noah woke from his wine, and he said, "Cursed, Aurora, be Canaan." Not Ham, Canaan. And this is why the sages question this. They slow down. Why Canaan? Why this order? Why these things? Ooh, this word for cursed. This is not the same word that's used for cursings in other places. This word has only been used once before. Only once before this time has this word for cursed been used before. God cursed the serpent and said, "Lowest of all the beasts you shall be, you shall crawl upon your belly." And what is the curse for Canaan? You shall be the lowest of the low. You shall be a slave among the slaves to all your brothers. And then he immediately says, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to Shem, and may Japheth be expounded." And it's really interesting. May the beauty of Japheth, with Japheth, Japheth means beauty anyways, but may the beauty of Japheth become beautiful, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a slave to them both. And then we end it, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and the days of Noah were 950 years.
To add a similarity, real quick, the other occasions we do see something similar to this subject, and I'm going to be making a drastic jump just because of the way you tied this in. The last time I've seen anything equivalent to the disruption of the private chambers of the head of the house is the moving of a bed from one wife to the others.
And what did that do? It kept him from being the double portioned firstborn. Good tie-in. Good job, Jesse. That's spot on. Is he interrupted something there? Whatever Ham did, and I'll tell you, Rashi expounds upon the Talmud. Talmud really has a debate over 2 things: either Ham castrated his father Noah, or Ham, and I want to be polite and gentle with this, sodomized Noah. And again, don't focus on those words and don't focus on those specific things. The intent and the purpose behind it was to stop Noah from procreating. Regardless of what Ham actually did, the intent and purpose was to usurp and keep Noah from having another child to which Ham would have to compete. The purpose was to stop that so Ham now could have the double portion. And from this point, we're going to see more pronounced and more clearly with Ishmael and Isaac and with Esau and Yaakov, the fight for this double portion. And then when we get to the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Israel, we're going to see that same fight over and over again of who's going to inherit this double portion. And we see that through Midrash that Israel saw that, oh, wait a minute, that double portion is meant to be commingled between two brothers. One gets the portion, the blessing of the earth. One gets the blessing of the heavens, so that the heavens and the earth can be joined together as one within man. And it's going to take two brothers. And so our opening song is, Frank,
What?
Hine Matov.
Oh. Hine matov manai.
Yeah.
Shevet King Amiacha.
Yeah. Blessed are two.
Behold how good and blessed it is for brothers to
Right.
dwell together.
Yes, and so we see that throughout this, and to me, it's just so amazing. And that's why focusing on the cubits and what's a cubit and the dimensions of the ark, those things are fascinating things. There's great mystical truths to be learned. Focusing on days of this and days of that. Again, wonderful, beautiful. Focusing on clean animals, unclean animals, focusing on all these other things is great. I wanted to back out and try to get back up to that 30,000, 40,000 foot level and try to see
The big picture.
what's the big picture here. And whenever I did that, and I was reminded of a couple of things I was looking at with, and I was going back and researching through Raphael Hirsch and a couple of other rabbis, they remind me of this relationship between Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and the story of Noah and the flood. To me, it was just mind-boggling. I don't know, guys, do you mind if I continue on just a little bit more, or do you guys have something you want to add to this? Because where this really started out for me was, how did Noah get his name? And that's what started me rolling on this whole thing. Noah.
You mean it wasn't from a jar of names?
That earlier.
Yeah,
It wasn't from a jar of names that she reached in, pulled out. Oh, and the winner is Noah.
that's what it was. Noah's mother. Oh, wait a minute. She doesn't really say anything here. Noah's dad, Lamech, he went around and said, "Hey, what do you think? What's a good name? Well, why don't you let him reach his 13th birthday, and then you name him at his 13th birthday?" Oh, okay, I'll do that. And well, gee, I'm at a blank here. But
Yeah, can you see that for 13 years? Hey, you, come here. No, you. Yeah, come here. What's my name? You don't get one till you're 13. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. or like Bill Cosby said, for so long I thought my name was Jesus Christ and my brother's name. No, I won't go into that whole skit, but that was a funny skit. Yeah, so the Torah tells us about Noah's name, Noah, and it tells us exactly how he got his name. And this is in last week's Torah portion. And what was it, chapter 5, verse 9, roughly, of Genesis, or Bereshit, chapter 5, verse 9. But he gets it from Lamech. And it's one of those odd things. All the names that are given to us that we're introduced to different people and we get their name. The majority of the time, the name is just given to us. And then at other times, it's the mother that names the child. But there's a few times, and the least amount of times, if we had 3 categories, the name is given, mother names, father names. The least amount of times is the father names the son, which is striking. And I don't want to chase that too much, other than when a father names a child, pay attention. You remember what I said about Eve? Eve said, "Oh, look, it's a boy. I've gotten a boy by the help of the Lord." And so she called him Cain, which Cain means given or received. It's a cognate of it. And again, I don't want to get into the naming conventions too much here, but so we see that the reason for the name tells us what the name is. Yaakov, he grabbed the heel, or he comes after, and those types of things. It's like a
Yitzhak.
dog. Yeah, a dog. It means something. In English, dog just means dog. It's that four-legged creature that just bounces around, or he snarls and growls, and you know, he hikes his legs on things. But in Hebrew, kelev means something different. Kelev means big-hearted and loyal.
Right.
We have a term, we have a title. Hebrew has a purpose. And so we see the purpose of the name of Noah in Genesis chapter 5. Lamech made a declaration upon the birth of Noah. And there's something very puzzling, and it's as one rabbi put it, it's very chilling. It's eerie, the naming of this child. Now, I'll tell you this, for several years, I've always thought it was a good thing. And this is the first time that it gave me pause. I'm not saying it's good or bad at this point in time. I'm just saying it gave me pause. Because this is how the rabbis tie this together. Keep in mind, there are very few times that the father names his child. So we strike up here. He says, Vayikra es shmo es Noach. And he called the name of his child Noach. Le'emor, saying, my Hebrew is so bad, so bear with me. Ze nachamenu itzvon yodenu min ha'adama asher era Hashem. In other words, this one shall comfort us, or give us rest. Noach means rest or comfort. This one shall comfort us from our deeds and from the sadness of our hands, from the land that God cursed. How would he know this? Well, again, it could be prophecy. We were closer to God before the flood than we are after the flood. We were closer to God in the garden than what we were after the garden. Adam had pure prophecy. Those after Adam had clear prophecy. I would dare say, I would equate it, I would dare, be cautious here. I would dare say the prophecy after the garden is similar to that of Moses. But that's just for comparison's sake. In other words, it was more clear than I got a dream or a vision. He spoke to me in a parable, the things that we get from the prophets of old, which is even more clear than any so-called prophet of today. So we'll go on. Somehow Lamech senses that this child is going to comfort not just him, but all of mankind. He's going to comfort mankind from the curse of the land. Now think about this. There's consequences from eating of the tree of knowledge. There were consequences of Cain's killing of Abel. And those consequences expressed to themselves in two main ways. Keep in mind, Adam was formed from the earth and placed into the garden where he experienced open communion with God. After he sinned, he was removed from the garden and placed back into the area where he is formed, and that open communion is diminished. He's separated from God with some degree. In the garden, the earth freely gave of itself to nourish the body, while God freely gave to Adam to nourish the spirit. This is mom and dad, so to speak. So to speak, I'm not going out into some witchcraft or craziness here, but the story that it's telling gives us a reminiscence of such an idea. The earth itself gives from itself, and we can see a mother coddling its baby, nursing the child. That's how freely it gives. Hence, Israel is called the land of milk and honey. Why milk and honey? Because milk and honey are the only two true nutrients and healing powers that nothing has to die. That's the idea here. The earth is freely giving in abundance. Adam sins after the tree of knowledge. Adam no longer gets to work in the garden. Now he has to work the earth in order to get anything of semblance of what he was getting freely. He was a caretaker in the garden. Now he's working the earth to get his fill. Cain kills his brother, and as a result, it's not just alienation from God, like it was for Adam, but now it's alienation from the earth. The text basically tells us that You thought you're going to have to work the earth to get its abundance. Now the earth is not even going to give you its abundance when you work it. So you're alienated from God and the earth. This is a man truly hanging. This is a true cursed man. Remember the idea of the punishment, one of the death penalties is hanging in Torah. You're suspended between heaven and earth. You're rejected by the earth and you're rejected by heaven. It's one thing to be rejected by God and having to work the earth. Now Cain is rejected by both. And here's what God says to Adam in the curse. Adam is told, "Betzivon tochlena kol yamia chayecha." In sadness, you will toil and you will work the land all the days. It won't just provide for you. Now you're going to have to work it to get it. It's be'etabecha techel lechem. By the sweat of your brow, you will work the land. And that curse also intensifies itself for Cain. It's even more so for Cain. It's doubly told, lo tosef tetchocha lach. It won't even give its bounty to you, even though you work it. For Cain. And now generations later, we see Lamech comes along. He senses that things could be different now. After all, it's been about 1,000 years. And he says, Ze ye nachamenu memasenu umetzvan yodenu. Jesse, I wish you were reading this in Hebrew so you could help me out in the pronunciation. You're so much better at reading Hebrew than I am. This one will comfort us from the sadness of our hands. The sadness of our hands. From the land that God has cursed. He almost sounds like Adam here, doesn't he? God, you cursed the earth. This one's going to give us a rest from your curse. It's God, it's your fault. Adam says, God, it's your fault because of the woman you gave me. She's the one that gave me the fruit, but it's your fault. It's like you're in an argument with somebody, your spouse, your co-worker, or your boss, or whatever. Hey, Jesse, you did this. Yeah, but it's not my fault because I only did that because you did this. Adam blames God. Lamech is blaming God. So those of you that want to blame a woman, guess what? That's not what Adam was doing. He was putting her in the line of blame. Don't get me wrong. But he was actually blaming God. It's God's fault. I wouldn't have done it if you hadn't given me the woman who gave me the apple. That's what's going on here. So what's God's response? Skip down 6 verses. Just skip on down 5. Where are we? 9, is it? Or no, I'm sorry. We were in chapter 5. Now go down to chapter 6, verse 6. And it says, God says, V'yenachem Hashem. And God says, and God regretted. V'yenachem Hashem. God regretted. Wait a minute. Didn't we see that before? Ze yachana nachemenu ve'nachem. These are the same words. It's the same root. One is comfort. The other one is regret. The root is the same. This is odd. And God regretted ki asa et hadama beretz, that he had created the man in the land. Ve'etetev I'm reading too fast. Ve'yet tatzev elivo, or libo, his heart, and his heart was saddened. And then God said, Imche et hadama asher berati mi'al penei hadama. I will wipe out man that I have created from the face of the earth. Now, if you will pay careful attention to these words here, you're going to find something that just set the rabbis off. There's 4 words that Lamech says that God says as well. And he says them God says them in the exact same order. Remember, Lamech is saying, this is why I'm calling him Noah, because he's going to give us rest from the curse. The curse that God created on the land. God says, I regret. Lamech's declaration, Ze yenachamenu miasanenu umetzitzvan yedenu min ha'adama asher era Hashem. This one will comfort us from the sadness of our hands, from the earth that God has created or God has cursed. The 4 words Lamech uses are in the specific order and the same order that God is going to use them. Yenachem, Mi Masenu, Mi Etzvan, and Adama. God says, I will regret. Lamech says, comfort. And it's the same word. Lamech says, Kiasa. There's word number 2, that he had made man from the land. Veyetzev, Kiasa, veyetzev elibo, and he became saddened. There's etzvan, sadness. That's number 3. And the 4th word, as if on cue, God says, I am going to wipe out man. Me'el peneha dama, from the face of the Adama, the earth. Lamech says, the curse of the earth. And this was striking, eerily striking, that the same order of these specific 4 words God uses in the same specific order for saying why he's going to destroy the earth. And it gets them thinking, now wait a minute, what was it that Lamech saw? Why was Lamech pronouncing that this one's going to give us rest? How did he know this one? What's he going to do to give us rest? And then them up with, well, Lamech knew through prophecy that Noah was going to invent the plow. Now, again, don't focus on the plow. Don't focus on the instrument. The idea, the intent and purpose behind the instrument is Lamech said Noah will use his creativity, tying back to the garden, tying back to the creation of the creation series. Noah will use his creativity and invent some type of technology. We'll just call it a plow. Some type of technology that will allow us to live within the curse comfortably. This uncomfortable reality we found ourselves in is God's fault. But Noah is going to give us rest from the curse through man's way. Man's creativity will give us this rest. Wow. And God says, no. I see where this is going. I've looked at man's heart, and there's only evil in all of his intentions. That's what's going on here, folks. This is, it's so beautiful. It's like the words drip off the tongue if you can read the Hebrew. And I wish I could speak it properly. I wish I could read it for you better, because it's like biting into that nice peach or that fruit, or cutting into a nice juicy steak. It drips in your mouth as you're reading this, and you go, oh my goodness, it's all right there for me. It truly is the gorilla pouncing on the table. Hey, pay attention to me. But we don't slow down because we've been lulled to sleep by the story year after year after year. We didn't slow down and read the text. It's right here. Lamech says, through man's creativity, we will find rest and comfort even within the curse. God says the purpose of the curse is to drive you back to me, not to find ways to succumb and live within it. What's this whole sadness about? What's so sad about working? Adam was created to be a worker. Placed him in the garden to work the garden, right? There's nothing wrong with working. We're created. Everything about us, our minds, our backs, our legs, our feet, everything about humans is meant for work. There's no sadness in work. But work without purpose, work without fruition, work without a goal becomes treacherous, drudging, and sad. If all I'm doing is waking up, going to work, coming home, eating dinner, to going to sleep, waking up, going to work, it becomes a sadness, a toil. What's going to break this cycle for me? Maybe, hopefully, I'm praying for, I'm investing to, so I can retire and go to Red River, New Mexico, where I can fly fish, because that's what I do. That's what I like to do. And
you hit me.
And so I'm toiling for that, and it's becoming sad, but there's a goal out there. God says your goal is your creativity, biological and technological. Biological procreation is to bring about me in this world. That's why sexual relations is so important to God. That's why when we get to Vayikra and the whole thing about nakedness is brought up over and over and over again, don't uncover the nakedness of your father, your brother, your mother, your sister, your aunt. Don't uncover this nakedness. And we go through a long thing of nakedness. That's why that's so important. That's why pornography is so wrong. That's why the whole procreation thing is so wrong, is because the only way for us to join with God in creation of procreation, the only way to bring an eternal spirit into this world is through sexual relationship. And if God is not in that, you've twisted it and made it something evil. That's why pornography, that's why so many things about sex is so wrong, is because if God is not in it, you've used your creative processes for something that goes against God. The next thing is technology. There's nothing wrong with making bricks. God didn't come against the people building the Tower of Babel for making bricks. You made bricks, I'm going to kill you. It wasn't the bricks. Well, maybe it was the tower. We're going to build a tower to heaven. God didn't kill them for the Tower of Heaven, going to heaven.
It wasn't what they were doing, it was the intention.
It was the intent. What are you doing with your creativity? The technological advances we've made in the 21st century is astounding. It blows away just about everything before. It's at such a speed and such a pace. But what's its intent? What's its purpose? It's not serving God's purpose. It's serving man's desires. The desires of man's heart, conjoined with man's ability to create, is what got Adam kicked out of the garden in the first place, is what caused the flood, the second place, is what caused the confounding of the languages at Babel. Isn't it interesting that we have three major stories in Genesis, in Bereshit? Adam, Noah, and Abraham. Abraham takes up 2/3 of Bereshit. If we follow the pattern, this is Adam, what he did results. Noah, what he did results. After each one of these, there's a destruction, there's a divide, there's a chasm that grows. But with Abraham, with Abraham, it's different. This is the example of how to use your procreation, your sexual desires in the appropriate way. This is how to use your creativity of technology in the appropriate way. Abraham dug wells. Abraham searched for a son to carry on. The rest of it, midrash.
Okay. It's 8 minutes till, or excuse me, 7 minutes till. So how do we wrap it up?
I don't know, because I could go on for another 2 hours, but
Well,
because
you
You probably could go on for another
there's so many more things here in the text. It's just I want to talk about everything, because it's a taste in your mouth. You want more and you want more and you want more. It's the all day sucker. It's what's Willy Wonka's the everlasting gobstopper. It really is. It's so beautiful and it tastes so sweet. As you go through this and you start finding these things in the Hebrew, and you bring it about, and you see the patterns developing and the cycles developing, and you see the structure, and you realize it's not about the sin. It's not the sin. It's about the intent. It's about the purpose. It's about the goal of returning to the garden, not the shortcut or way of how we can deal and live within the curse of the ground. And with that, I wrap it up with, again, God closed the doors of the ark, but it was Noah that opened it. God closed the door on his creation, and Noah opened the door to a new creation, a recreation. There's a huge difference of what was going on the conditions of the earth, the conditions of the animals, the condition of man pre-flood, after the flood. Now we have the 9/10 of the rest of Torah dealing with how to live after the flood and our route and return back to the garden, not becoming complacent and finding comfort or a way of comfort to live in the curse. No, it's here's the path back. Straight and narrow is the path. Here's the rules for living within the land. This is why the land is so important, because Adam, it's in your name. Adam, Adama. You are from the earth. I connected myself, says God, with physical reality by using physical reality and breathing into it a spiritual life. You are the connection between heaven and earth, Adam. Ooh, wow! I'm looking at myself on the video for the first.
Oh my
Hey,
God.
I'm making a frame out of my head, so that's me. Oh, right. Anyways, go ahead.
You're
Let's close it out, guys.
Well,
Okay.
I will, for a brief wrap up on my end, one of the things that I kept seeing referenced throughout all of this portion is something that can easily be quoted, though it will have to be modified, from our favorite cult classic movie, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. We, I can use the quote very easily, but I'll just modify the phrasing of truth to whatever we want to imply here. All your life, you've been so close to insert here that it becomes a permanent blur in the corner of your eye. And when someone nudges it into view, it's like being ambushed by a grotesque. This entire portion has felt like we've kind of done that, whether it be finding truth or being revealed by children revealing nakedness, or by what you think is truth but is not truth and modify it in that light. And it's just that whole aspect of, with Adam, with Noah, with even God for that matter, it's the expression that something comes to mind, something comes into view after being obscured for some reason, and it's just boom. It takes you by surprise. It takes them by surprise drastically.
And you wake up as though from a dream, and we even see that as after the day of the Lord, after the return of all the ingathering, after all of these things, Messiah is revealed, the whole world knows the name of God, and the name of God is restored. After all of this, the prophet tells us it'll be like you're going to wake up from a dream. That tribulation thing that everybody wants to talk about and live through and do whatever they want to with it, it'll be like a dream. Everything, the past 6,000 years, it's just going to be a dream, and you're going to wake up to a different perspective, a different reality, and you'll see God more clearly. So we see this reminiscent with Adam, with Noah. We're going to see it with Abraham. He falls into a deep trance and wakes up. I mean, we're going to see this over and over. So,
Right.
anyways, Frank, take us out. You guys get me talking again, and I'm gonna.
The last thing I see is that what we've discussed before is there is nothing but God. So therefore, creation must be within God. So within God is the galaxy. Within God is the planet Earth. Within God, He created Adam from that Earth. So, in a sense, when we rebel against Him, we injure Him, not just ourselves. So, it is a whole lot more that goes on with that, but we're out of time. I'm sorry. This is 2.5 Opinions. I'm Frank.
I'm Yishai.
I'm not the Rebbe.
You keep using that phrase. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, quite possibly. All right, so guys, go ahead and hang up, and I'll get us out of here.
Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov, Lail Tov, להתראות.